Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us here at Shea Booba tonight, and welcome to our online audience. Tonight, we're going to start off with our sponsors, just like always. So we'd like to give a big round of applause for Carib Trans and Satel. Without their sponsorship, we would not be able to live stream to you all. We'd also like to give a big round of applause for Public Entity SEBA and CCG, formerly known as Prince Bernhard Culture Funds, as they are big long-term sponsors of our program. And a big thank you to all of our sponsors. We have over 60, I believe now, from hotels, restaurants, nonprofits, other organizations on the island, off the island, in the US, the Netherlands, lots of sponsors, so thank you. And tonight, we'd also like to give a big shout out to the Cottage Club for hosting tonight's speaker, Alex. So thank you, Cottage Club. And if you haven't heard this for the 10th time or something already, we are selling raffle tickets. $5 a piece. You have a great chance to win. You can stop by the bar or find Lynn or I either tonight or at our office, another presentation night, $5, great chance to win, amazing prizes from trips to Statia, St. Martin, St. Croix, a week on a liveaboard, and also handcrafted items from local artists. So please buy raffle tickets. They help us with some of our costs, such as arranging taxis to venues, printing costs, a lot of out-of-pocket costs that we otherwise do not have money to fund. And then a few upcoming events at a glance. Tomorrow, our speaker for tonight will be leading a seed hike at 3 o'clock. You can meet us at the tent. The location is still yet to be determined, but we will let you know as soon as we know. And then again on Wednesday, we have a shark dive with our expert, Erin Winter, who will be arriving tomorrow. And then our next presentation will be just next door at Amanhana with Lars, and he is in the audience, so if Lars can stand up, give a big wave. He will be our next presenter. And if you attend any of these field projects, you get to receive one of these fantastic recycled material green shirts. They are sun shirts, so they're really nice for hiking. They're really nice to wear on the boat. So all you have to do is attend a field project, and you get a shirt. And tonight's keynote speaker is Alex Sloan, and he is here this evening to plant the seed about seeds. Dr. Alex Sloan is a, tenured full professor at the University of Puerto Rico at Bayamon, where he teaches biology, botany, ecology, and undergraduate research. He is a biology graduate of Memphis State University, earned a botany degree from the University of Tennessee at Knoxville, and a PhD in tropical biology from the University of Puerto Rico at Rio Piedras. His research interests include demographic studies of plants that are habitat specialists in high light conditions and insects that interact as pollinators, herbivores, vectors of disease, and/or prey. He has also conducted research on seed dispersal by Old World primates introduced to Puerto Rico, and he is currently researching a rare carnivorous plant to better understand how they avoid feeding on their pollinators. So we don't have any carnivorous plants tonight, but please welcome the plantastic Alex.
Thank you. Thank you all. Can you hear me? So I would like to say special thanks to Shea Booba for providing the venue, and Cottage Club Hotel for providing a home away from home, and of course Lynn and Emily from See and Learn for the invitation tonight. I really appreciate their support, as well as my university for giving me time free to be here. So when I was in the garden of the Cottage Club, I popped this photo thinking it could be of help explaining. Before I get into seed dispersal, I want to show you how pollination and seed dispersal have similarities, and they have obvious differences, but the similarities are that a flower, the plant, is attracting an insect and giving it a reward in order to move its gametes, or its sex cells, the male sex cells, from one flower and deposit them on a female structure, the stigma of another flower. And then a lot of other stuff goes on. The pollen has to germinate, a pollen tube grows down into an ovule, which will develop into the seed, and the ovule is housed within the ovary, which will develop into the fruit. Okay, and so they're similar in the sense that a plant ovary begins to change, it gets bigger, it changes color to note to a would-be seed disperser that it's ready to be dispersed. So a mango goes from dark green to maybe a little buff orange or red, and we as primates know that's the time to get up there and get those fruit, right? We also are dispersers. And so, I'm going to give you basically an intro to seed dispersal, and then I'll get into my research, assuming we got some time here and you guys don't kick me out of here. So seed dispersal is a process in which seeds are transported away from the parent plant. It ensures a wider distribution of the species by the seeds getting into these new habitats. It reduces competition with the parent plant. There's been studies to show that seeds that fall under the parent plant have a more likelihood of dying due to pathogen eating them, because they live right under the parent tree. There's plenty to feed on the seeds that just rain down under the parent. So that's why the plant is willing to offer such a great reward. Think of an avocado, or all that lipids are there, all that energy that the plant's not using for photosynthesis to make food for itself, right? And so it's making this food to attract an organism to move those seeds further away for the next generation and success of the offspring. So there's several of these important slides here. So it increases genetic diversity because this is sexual reproduction resulting in this seed, right, that's going to get dispersed. And it enables new habitats to be colonized by getting those seeds out there. It plays a critical role in ecosystem dynamics, and it's essential for forest regeneration and restoration. You can see in this image there's a succession going on, and we've learned that if, for instance, certain plants aren't around, maybe they went extinct, and so you have this group of plants, and as it grows, it changes the environment, and that allows for another group of plants to come in, which, as they grow, change the environment, which facilitates the next group of plants, and usually they're bigger, taller, and they provide more shade as the organic matter in the soil accumulates over time. And eventually you'll get to a climax, a community of plants. But we found out that in Puerto Rico, while plants are adapted to hurricanes and they come back quickly, usually a hurricane's going to knock down a tree and open up the canopy, but there's still forest around it. But when you have agriculture and clear out huge swaths of forest, Puerto Rico used to be 95% deforested, and now we're up to 65% forested with the abandonment of agriculture and moving in and doing industry. And so we've learned that some plant species, perhaps with wind dispersed seeds, might get into these locations, but plants weren't, the forest wasn't coming back in these agricultural areas, and there were barriers to of reestablishment of this forest. And so they were looking at, what are the effects and what prevents this from happening. But this is this is well documented, and so you need all of these successional sears present in order for you get natural reestablishment of the forest. I want you thinking about how we affect the environment, and then therefore we need to be part of that solution to bring back those environments. So how does seed dispersal affect pollination? This is a jump, but I'm going to try to do it. So as seeds disperse in low density, so a few seeds get spread out away from the parent plant, there's greater distances between those future plants as they germinate and grow up, and that's going to require a greater reward. So if those plants don't naturally produce a lot of nectar, then the pollinator won't be able to fly the distance to the next plant to successfully deposit the pollen on the stigma. If on the other hand, the seeds get dispersed in high densities, there's lots of seeds per unit area, there's less distance among the plants, and therefore you might get more inbreeding. That is, a pollinator may take pollen from a brother and deposit it on a sister kind of thing, or onto the parent plant, but it requires less pollinator reward. So maybe a smaller pollinator that doesn't require a lot of energy could make those distances. So these are just the things that seed dispersal can affect, and it's a cascade of things, maybe more than we tend to think about. The effects on island ecosystem functioning. Island animals may be more susceptible to extinction than their mainland counterparts, and if your pollinator is specialized, like the plant only has that insect or that bird is the only pollinator of the plant, and the bird goes extinct, now the seeds would just fall to the ground and rot, right? Or germinate, and where pathogens would more likely kill them. And so this is the importance of seed dispersal. Islands may also have fewer redundancies, more organisms to tote the load, right? If a species goes extinct. Like in Puerto Rico, we have these parrots, and they're highly endangered now, and we've been trying to get them back. But there's also trees that are becoming endangered, where their distribution is over one or two plants here and a few plants over there. And when students brought this species to me, they said, well, it has a little flesh around the edge of it. And I told them to maybe take some of those and see if a parrot can manipulate them, and then plant them and see if they germinate better than seeds that the parrot doesn't manipulate, right? It could be that the Puerto Rican parrot was the disperser of that seed, and it's no longer playing that role because it's in such low abundance right now. We're trying to bring back this critical frugivore. A frugivore is an organism that eats fruit or usually consumes fruit and then deposits the seeds through the digestive tract of the organism. Okay, so fewer redundancies, like if something goes away, you don't have any other species there. You could bring in other organisms that are big enough, maybe that could disperse, but that can cause other problems, right? It's not only you trying to play God or you trying to anticipate all the ecological changes that will occur with a new species. As long as it's very similar, it's a parrot as well, for instance, and maybe the similar size, it's not a guarantee that it will eat the same foods. And so you try to bring back the species, the original species, because they form these co-evolved relationships with these other organisms in their environment. And when you just add another species, this is the reason why you want to try to protect your native species, is that when you add another species, you could say, well, we don't have that many species on an island, and so we should be able to add some more and without any problem. Well, maybe not. Because just a single insect could destroy a whole group of plants, for instance, and so you wouldn't want that. extinction of a specialized, I think I already touched upon this, a specialized seed disperser, one that is critical to the life of a particular plant. If it goes extinct, then it could endanger that plant. You know, the plant can live for a long time, hundreds of years, and so maybe over that time, naturally another organism would arrive. Certainly many more would arrive because of human action, but would any of them serve as a disperser for this species? Because if it's a specialized system, the plant, right, is going to be producing something to prevent all other organisms from dispersing it. So it could be slightly toxic, it could be hard to digest, it could be that the seeds aren't calling attention, the fruit's not calling attention to the other animals. And so so just bringing any other species doesn't guarantee you're going to get these seeds dispersed. So just bringing any other species doesn't. Sorry. Okay. Okay. So before seed dispersal, there was seed dormancy. So what I'm meaning by that is before seed dispersal evolved, likely a seed dormancy had to evolve first. Otherwise, the seeds would germinate within the fruit, and you can see evidences of that in plants that we cultivate. Dormancy is a state where seeds do not germinate despite favorable conditions. And so normally, when you plant a seed, when you take a seed from a fruit and you want to plant it, what do you do first? I'm asking the audience. Dry it. Why do you dry it? You don't know, but that's what you're told, right? You dry it out, and that's a signal that obviously it's not still in the fruit, right? Or the fruit dries out, right? But that's a signal that now you could to germinate. And so there are environmental conditions that the seeds sometimes have to go through. In higher or lower extreme latitudes, winter. So you have to put seeds in the refrigerator if you're in the tropics to get them to germinate, like parsley, for instance. My wife was trying to grow some parsley and put the seeds there, and they didn't germinate. And then I'm reading the instructions, and it says put them in the fridge for a couple weeks. And that was the cue necessary to get the seeds to then germinate. And so there's environmental dormancy, there's organic dormancy. And environmental dormancy are just unfavorable environmental conditions like I just mentioned. And then organic dormancy, these are characteristics of the seed that prevents it from germinating. There are internal characteristics, like there's a chemical produced that inhibits the seed from germinating, or there's external characteristics of the seed, like a hard seed coat that has to crack or be worn down before the seed will germinate, so it could prevent it. So how can seed dispersal occur? It can occur by self mechanisms. That is, the plant itself has a mechanism by which it disperses its seed, and then that's called autochory, and then allochory are these external agents of dispersal, and I'm going to talk ad nauseum about those. And there's abiotic, wind, water, and gravity, and then there's biotic factors like animals. And I'll show you a small video here. These are self-means of
crammed into a special pod. As the pod dries out, the pressure is intense.
Being shot out.
Eventually, something's got to give.
Of course, there's sound effects. When I was in Zimbabwe,
Touch-me-nots are even more highly sprung.
I saw
the slightest contact triggers a chain reaction. Seeds light up the sky like a fireworks display.
And I look up and I see this seed pod just flipping and seeds just zooming by my head. So it's very effective for some plants. These are touch-me-nots. Once you start, you can't stop. You just start touching them. This is crazy. You can turn the volume up.
Looking plant, the squirting cucumber. It only takes a tiny vibration, and the cucumber starts a spectacular show. Seeds disappear into the distance like rockets. Spreading new plants in every direction.
That is more drama. So these plants aren't investing energy into nutrient-rich fruits with vitamins and mineral, everything people tell you the benefits of eating fruit, fiber, all these things. The plant's putting those in there to attract a disperser to take the seeds away. These self-means of dispersal, these plants don't have to do that, right? They don't have to put all of the energy like that. There's other mechanisms that have evolved. There's also wind dispersed seeds. This is anemocori and mahogany, plumerias or the frangipani, dandelions are examples where the fruit's dry, and when it dries out, it pops open, and these seeds either helicopter down or float away like the milkweed here. And then there's water dispersal, which is called hydrochory, mangrove seeds. They float in the water of the red mangrove, at least, and mangroves will stratify themselves along the coast because these will touch the bottom first and stop moving, and then the smaller mangrove seeds, the black mangrove, will come in with the tide a little further, and then the white mangrove will even be further up on land. And so you find them typically in this order when they're growing in the forest. This is Pterocarpus seeds. The nearest relative of our Caribbean Pterocarpus is in Africa, and we believe they floated across. Coconuts, certainly well known. Aquatic dispersal. Then there's gravity dispersed. Now, I'm not necessarily a believer in gravity dispersal, but I'm going to discuss it anyhow. So they seem simple at first, like gravity to just fall down, right? And then the example often given is the Brazil nut. This is an example of barracory. The avocado, this is the, what's it called in the West Indian locust tree. And there's been studies. There's no known disperser of the West Indian locust, and it's a big fruit. And these monkeys that were introduced to Puerto Rico, I see that they snap them open with their jaw, and those fruits are really hard. And so that just is a testament to the strength of those jaws of those monkeys. But we'll see examples of this in a moment. We're going to look at a video of the Brazil nut really quickly. Last video, I swear.
Some are so well protected that it seems that nothing could eat them. These capsules, which in themselves are as hard as cannonballs, contain the individually armored seeds, the nuts of the Brazil nut tree.
Sound effects help. It's gonna fall forever. Couple hundred feet.
Even a fall of a couple of hundred feet doesn't crack them. Only one has the equipment to open them. The agouti. The agouti has two pairs of front teeth that are as sharp as chisels, and they enable it to gnaw a hole into the capsule and get at the seeds. But the Brazil nut tree has a way of protecting its seeds from the only animal that has managed to penetrate its armor. It presents it with 15 or 20 nuts, far more than an individual could eat in one sitting. And the agouti has a habit which exactly suits the Brazil nut. It prudently buries what it can't eat immediately to save it for another time. What it doesn't have is a perfect memory. It loses track of what it's buried, and a significant proportion of the nuts survive to sprout.
So, not to enter the conversation that was made previous about, I guess, honeybees and native bees, but I would like to say this, that honeybees are generalist pollinators. They're not specialist pollinators. And so they might, move, but they're not going to move necessarily your pollen to the next plant, right? They're going to move it to the next flower, which may not even be your species. And maybe in that, 1 in 1,000 will do the job, right? And so it might be that that it works. But if there is a native pollinator, a solitary bee or otherwise, that's been doing the job over this whole forest in Ceiba, that would be the better pollinator, because it would go from one of this species to the other of the same species, right? They specialize on that plant. And so I don't know what plants are, I'm not want to enter this this argument, but it is worth noting. And so specialized seed dispersers exist as well. And the famous one, I guess, and it relates to the Dutch islands, perhaps the dodo birds. Dutch sailors found them delicious, and they are now extinct. But it's a big bird, so it can move big seeds, right? It could pass big seeds through it. Turtles were also on Mauritius and Reunion Islands off the coast of Madagascar there, and they're also extinct. And so there's a lot of trees that they're having issues with. And yes, you could just do restoration work where the people are taking the little flesh off of the seed and planting them, trying to reestablish. But they've loaned, the Seychelles have loaned some of their turtles, giant tortoises, and they've tried to use them as dispersers. But there are papers saying, we don't know if that's going to be that successful. There was once a gomphafir, a large elephant that had tusk above and below, and in South America, and it's thought to have been the disperser of avocados. The Puerto Rican parrot certainly dispersed seeds in Puerto Rico. We don't necessarily know which, but we could guess by the size of seeds and if they start picking up some of these fruits again and manipulating them and helping some of these species come back. In the center is a ginkgo. Ginkgo is a gymnosperm, so it's not a flowering plant. Yes, it is a seed plant, and it has, you can't call them fruit, it has a fleshy cone that smells a little bit like dog feces to me. And so maybe, given that odor, and maybe it attracted dogs, but I doubt it, it was maybe some dinosaur it attracted, and it would disperse those seeds. And so even in gymnosperms, even before angiosperms, there were probably organismal relationships moving these things around. So zoochory is animal dispersal, and humans do this, and we specialize that, we separate that, call it anthropochory, and epizoochory is transported externally. If you've ever walked through a field, you're covered in seeds, you're the disperser, right? You're the one. There's inadvertent zoochory, and we saw that with the agouti. It digs and it buries. Squirrels do this. Several rodents do that kind of behavior. Myrmicochory is ant dispersal. We'll see some examples of this. And then there's endozoochory that goes through the digestive tract of an organism. And so some of the ways that you can simulate this is you could use some acid, hydrochloric acid, and put seeds in it for a little bit to to act like stomach acids, and then you could plant those seeds. And you probably get better germination rates if they were adapted to go through the digestive tract of an organism. So if it's just left to us and you can't find a surrogate organism or somebody else to do that work, there are ways of doing this. And there's other ones I decided not to talk about, but ictochory with fish, and then saurochory, that's this turtle or reptile dispersal. Certainly, humans do an awesome job of getting plenty of, if it weren't for humans, I imagine corn would still be some small little grass that we would ignore in Mexico. And now it's all over the planet. And then there's horticulture means of trade and nurseries that we spread seeds everywhere. And a lot of species benefit from that. This is for you guys because, I knew goats were an issue. And so I looked up some papers, and certainly they can transfer seeds in their fur and in the mud on their hooves, and also through endozoochory, through their digestive tract. Some mostly exotic grasses disperse better than native grasses, but they also spit seeds, and this is a new way of dispersal that was discovered with this publication, and it was with the argon seeds, and they're apparently super hard, and so in their chewing, the goat just spits them out, right? Monkeys also spit seeds on occasion because they're just too big and they spit them out. Cockaburros, when I was a child, would get these all in our hair and everything else, and this is where the invention for inspiration for Velcro, the reason kids don't know how to tie their shoe today, is that these little hooks, he made little hooks and loops, and it was originally a military contract, but when you rip a grenade off, it makes a sound and you get shot, and so it didn't work for the military, so it was made public, and anyway. So there's seeds here. These fruits, these dry fruits, they hang in the feet of megafauna in Africa, and so they look horrible, and they look like they would, permanently injure you, but they actually don't hurt these organisms. And as the organism walks, like an ostrich or something, the seeds will fall out, and eventually it will break away and fall away. Grappling hook methods of dispersal. And then ant dispersal. So there's an iliosome on the outside of that fruit that the ant is dragging it by, and the ants will eat that or feed that protein-rich iliosome to its larvae as they develop, and then they'll take the seed to their disposal pile and throw it out. And so in that way, they are serving as dispersers. And then this is an inadvertent, this is a agouti eating some kind of a seed, and we know that they'll bury a portion of their seeds, and they'll either die or perhaps their memory doesn't serve them well. And there are secondary means of dispersal. This is a dung beetle, and doing what dung beetles do, it's some scat of or fecal pile of a primate full of seeds, and this beetle will make a little ball, and it will roll that ball around and bury it and lay its eggs in it, and the larvae will feed off of the nutrition from the manure or the feces, and then it will grow into a beetle and fly away and do the same thing, right? They're all over Africa, and they're competing for waste products of animals, actually. But in the process, they're dispersing seeds. This one is from Costa Rica, not Africa. And so, intermission, no, okay. But if you have any questions, we can talk about that. That was a general talk about seed dispersal, and this is seed dispersers as, introduced species serving as seed dispersers. Go ahead.
So, can I guess that you are anti-seed bombing?
Anti?
Seed bombing?
Seed bombing? Like,
When they just disperse seeds out of an airplane hoping to reforest an area?
I don't know why I would be anti necessarily. If it were my job, I would certainly consider it. I mean, so would they germinate? Are there dispersers there? I mean, there are considerations you need to make before starting any restoration project. And there's a lot of reason why you would, just out of being lazy. You want to go with native species, right? Because you're complicating yourself by putting non-native species. No, I'm not saying you don't need to eat. This is an island. You've got to have non-native species, right? We all have to eat. And so you're going to kill something, a plant or an animal. You're going to kill something. And so, you got to weigh the good and the bad, right? Anyway, other questions? So we're going to talk about how introductions of primates in Puerto Rico and what these monkeys are doing, because that was the question. The monkeys had been there for 40 years, doing what monkeys do, reproducing, and the population was growing, but I didn't see any effort really to get rid of them. And I had lived for a year in Africa, and I thought, you don't want monkeys running around. You can't have agriculture on an island with monkeys running around.
Are these the same monkeys that are on St. Kitts?
I believe I saw a picture of the ones in St. Kitts, and they look like vervets. And I don't think we have vervet green. Yeah, no, we don't have those yet. But if they're nearby, give it a time. So ecological communities are shaped by both direct and indirect interactions of organisms. So it's not necessarily the organism interacting directly like a pollinator with the plant, but that can, the presence or the greater distribution of this plant could then have other effects on other organisms, so indirect things can happen as well. In Puerto Rico, we have a lot of introduced organisms. There's rats, there's black and brown, there's dogs, there's caimans, there's blue gold macaws, which I saw one the other day and I thought, it's only a matter of time. But they fly over my house 2 or 3 times a day. There's bufo marinus toads, which are from South America. They have these toxic glands on their head. I'll talk a little bit more about them. There's certainly goats on Mona Island, pigs on Mona Island. There were save the pig, save the goat protests when they tried to get rid of them. And you can be pro-goat, you can be pro-pig, then you're anti the vegetation and animals on Mona Island. You can't be both in that case. It's a reserve. It's like the Galapagos of the Caribbean, and there's no humans there, so there's no need to have these introductions. People like to hunt them, and the government makes money off selling permits to hunt them, but they really need to get rid of them. And there's a lot of caves. It would be difficult, but it's possible. We have feral cats, and they're not like your domestic cats. You're not going to pet a feral cat. There are mongoose, and there are deer on Culebra Island. I don't know how these things get there, but they're there, right? And then the chupacabra, of course. You never get a good picture of a chupacabra, but yeah. So I saw this organism wash up after a hurricane. I suppose it's one of those feral cats, if I were to guess. I go to the southwest of Puerto Rico looking for this plant. This plant I spent 20 plus years studying it for my doctorate, and afterwards. I didn't take that long to get my doctorate. But this is Plumeria alba and a frangipani, and I'm surprised it's not here. I would think it would be. It has a caterpillar that is black with yellow stripes that will completely defoliate the plant. And this is what interests me, but every paper I read said you could find it in the Sierra Bermejas of Puerto Rico, along with these other rare and endangered species. And I started thinking, what? This is weird. And where I was studying, it was not here. So I had to go check it out with my students. And when I did, we stumbled across something like this. And my students were like, what's this? And I go, well, I'm guessing monkey feces. I hear there's monkeys out here somewhere. And then they yell, probe, mira arriba. And so I look up and I see 4 patas monkeys looking down at us, and I see their excitement. And I thought, well, we could do a project with monkeys if you want. And they're probably thinking fuzzy monkeys. And I'm thinking this, right? This is how we're going to interact with this as a research project. And so the first thing I found out is they carry herpes B. And herpes B is lethal to all primates except rhesus monkeys. And rhesus monkeys, it's a sexually transmitted disease, but a couple of weeks of flu-like symptoms and you die. So we did have to take some precautions here, and we would, I'll tell you how we did that in a moment. So species introductions, are they good, are they bad? the quintessential example of why you don't want to introduce species comes from Guam, and the brown tree snake was accidentally introduced on military equipment, and it led to the degradation of the entire ecosystem. Many endemic vertebrates went extinct, birds, reptiles, mammals, all went extinct because of this snake that was not native. And now they're dropping mice laden with aspirin, and apparently that will kill the snake, and they parachute them down like your seed bomb, and the snakes find them in trees, and they eat them, and presumably they're going to help reduce the population of snakes. Get rid of it? Probably not, but at least reduce the population. But they've already experienced extinctions, right? And so this is why in an ecology class you're like, no, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. Because especially with animals, you don't know the effect. And with plants, they may not have the dispersers or the pollinators that they need to complete their life cycle either, so your restoration may not last long. Coquis were introduced accidentally, I assume, to Hawaii. And if you hear so much as a ko or a key, your land is devalued by like $100,000. And so they do not like coquis on this island. Puerto Ricans adore them, but they do not like them, and they spray them with coffee to kill them. And so, Hawaii is a young island, just like this island, and this island's probably younger. And so these co-evolved systems, especially when you have a unique species that's endemic, only found on that island, can't really necessarily tolerate these introductions. They disrupt these populations and these interactions that plants and animals have, and can lead to extinctions. And so they're very adamant about introductions and try to limit them. This is, on oceanic islands worldwide, species richness has almost doubled as a result of non-native plants becoming naturalized over time. And so adding plants versus of animals, we'll talk about that, but it may be that plants aren't doing as much damage as animals are. So in Puerto Rico, non-native plants provide necessary ecosystem functioning by restoring degraded habitats previously made unusable by these by native species. And so this is a study by Ariel Lugo, and they found that native forests weren't coming back on these pastures. So once pastures were abandoned, they would just stay fallow with grasses growing. And there's things that, I discussed this a little bit previously, but there are things that inhibit either the disperser doesn't like going into open areas, so it just doesn't disperse into those areas, or the compacting of the soil won't allow the seeds to germinate and grow. You're not meeting the environmental conditions that forest species need in order to germinate. And so there's a lot of factors at play, and so then you have to go in and you have to do restoration work. So do the outcomes of these scenarios simply reflect differences between introductions of animals versus those of plants? I present questions. I don't necessarily present answers here. And so I started doing this project with my students of looking at seed dispersal with these monkeys because I didn't see a lot going on. I did see they were destroying crops, which I was already worried. And we know that at least the rhesus monkeys, the macaques, transmit lethal diseases. The patas monkeys are from Africa. They're fairly big, and they when they gallop, they're like known to be one of the fastest primates on Earth, I believe. And then the macaques are from India, and they regard them as gods, and they don't allow their export for medical research anymore. And so the Primate Center in Puerto Rico supplies labs with monkeys for medical research. That's why they're on Puerto Rico, but we have 2,000 on a nearby key, and then the Primate Center itself has maybe 1,000 individuals. So macaca mulata rhesus monkeys are predominantly frugivorous. That is, they eat fruit mostly for their diet. They consume fruit. In doing so, the seeds pass through their digestive tract and disperse when the monkeys defecate. Erythrocebus patus monkeys are omnivorous. They opportunistically eat animals, but they will also consume plants, including fruits. The seeds, if they get chewed or digested, you reduce or eliminate any benefit of seed dispersal. So, seed dispersal is this moving the live seed somewhere else, and it then germinates and grows into a plant. But these monkeys are doing things other than just dispersing seeds. They're breaking branches out of sabot trees, spelled differently than the silent. They're taking the leaves off of the plants growing on the offshore key where they are. They're gnawing on introduced species on the bark. This is Leucaena lucifolia, and they gnaw on the bark edges. And then one day I was walking down a trail and I hear this thump, and I asked my student, "Did you hear that?" And she said, "Yeah." I don't see anything, and so I keep walking, and then she screams, "What's this?" And I see what it is. I'm trying to explain in my head why it is like this. It's half of a bufo marinus, and it's still alive, right? So it was freshly thrown at us. And this is the business end. If you're going to eat any part of the bufo, the back leg would be the safest part. And maybe they've learned that, and they thought, "Watch this." And they threw it to us, thinking we might eat that business end. And of course we didn't. But I never seen anything like it. But if they're taking out introduced species, maybe that's a good thing, right? But even if that's a good thing, and that's one measure of good, they would be competing with our native fauna for fruit resources that during droughts could be limiting or limited and cause harm to our native fauna. And so monkeys may affect plants by positively by digesting and destroying the seeds of non-native plants, or positively by dispersing the seeds of native plants, or negatively by digesting and destroying the seeds of native plants, or negatively by dispersing the seeds of non-native plants. Right? If they're dispersing non-native plants, that's a problem because now they're all over the place. So this is the approach that I gave to this study. Our flora is not adapted for dispersal by non-flying mammals. The only mammals native to Puerto Rico are bats, Bacardi symbol. And so it's expected that the native plant species that successfully dispersed by the monkeys would probably be species with co-evolved life histories with birds or bats, because those are big enough, they change color, they have something to offer the monkey, right? They smell or something. And it's expected that more non-native species are dispersed than native species, because many of the non-native species are old world food plants for humans. And so they would, we're primates, they're primates kind of thing, and maybe they would eat some of those. The study was done in the southwest of Puerto Rico. It's very dry in that area. And this is not only the oldest part of Puerto Rico. It came out before the central Cordilleras of Puerto Rico. It came out, it was in the Caribbean before there were any other islands in the Caribbean. So this is ancient, and it has a lot of our endemic species in this habitat. That's why all those papers I was reading mentioned them. And so this is where it was done. It's on a Fish and Wildlife, so it's federal land. It's called the La Tinja Reserve. And so students would, take precaution because herpes B. We would take the feces, and 15 of them we would place in an oven at 65 degrees C, and then place them in 95% alcohol to try to degrade the protein coat on any virus. Viruses are not considered alive, so you can't kill them, but you can make them ineffective. And then 5 of them we planted hot, so to speak, on top of soil in the greenhouse. These are the ones with feces, and these are the ones without feces, and these are the control. But why would I have a control? Once I realized I was doing an experiment, I was like, what's my control? And then why is my control? Can you guess why I would have a control for this experiment of no feces and feces? I'll cut to the chase because I've already gone over my time. So anything growing in these pots either dispersed there after my experiment started, or the soil was not sterile like it said it was on the package and had some seeds that survived and they germinated. And if I find those plants here, I can ignore them because they were already there or they dispersed there, right? And so you can see things are germinating out of the fecal samples, and they look different than things in the other pot. There's tamarindo there and the big seeds of tamarindo. And so I don't know how to identify seeds. And so the way you do it is you go out and I took pictures of everything, all the fruits that I found in the field, and then I made herbarium specimens of those, and then I asked Frank Axelrod, who had been here years before, for help in identifying these species. And now I know who the plant is, I can write who the seed is, and now I can make my comparisons of seeds that I find in feces to seeds that are known, right? So you create a seed library, and that's what's going to help you get these results. And so then we looked at, almost 100 fecal samples, and we got some 7,000 almost seeds out of them. Tamarindo, Panicum maximum is a grass. It's non-native from Africa. Could be associated to more fires, so that's not a good thing. This one's a food plant. It's not taking over Puerto Rico, and we do eat it. Leucaena lucifolia is introduced, but there's only one seed. I could care less. Lantana, there's a lot of seeds of lantana, and we think it's Caribbean. The fruits, when they're green, are toxic. Pardon?
What is lantana?
Common name. Butterfly, yeah, it's just lantana, but it's butterflies visited. It's orange and yellow flowers, but the fruits are green first and then change color. When they're green, they're toxic, can kill a child.
Is it fruit?
And the seeds are the fruit. They have a little flesh on the outside, right? And so there's a lot of those, and I guess they're eating them, right? And then there's Pilosoceras is a cactus, a columnar cactus. And they're eating that, but it's experiencing a disease right now, and so many of our big, huge columnar cacti are dying. So this could be a good thing that they're dispersing them. But again, they could be competing with native fauna. There's Cocoloba krugeri, a native species. There's also a melocactus, which is a native and endangered species. There's some unknown cacti. I could tell by the seed it's a cactus. I didn't know who it was. And then there's 700 seeds that I don't know. Wasn't in our seed library. I don't know where they found them. And so we planted them, and the plants grew out. And then what I wanted to do is take those plants back and put them in the field, because if the monkeys eat the seedlings, then that's farming. That's not seed dispersal as we know it as a benefit. And so then the whole thing goes in the air. There's no benefit to these monkeys. And my cameras really didn't get the image that I needed. I get the back of a monkey and I go back and the plant's dead. So did they kill it or didn't they kill it? I don't have evidence really. But to conclude, monkeys are consuming the fruits of both native and non-native species. The seeds of both are surviving the digestive tract of the monkeys. Monkeys are dispersing the seeds of Panicum maximum, a species that could result in more fires in this region. The monkeys are also dispersing the seeds of cacti, both an endangered species and one that's currently experiencing a disease. And then there's secondary effects like changes in forest composition that could take longer to become evident and prove more difficult to measure. You need before how the forest is how the forest looks right now, and then 30, 40 years after monkeys have been there, how does the forest now look? And so I wasn't able to accomplish this goal. The reason that it applies to you here in Saba is that you may not have monkeys yet, but monkeys are near. But you've got other organisms, right? And so some of these concepts that I placed in your head, you can now ponder the significance of an introduction or the possibility of extinction of some of your plants, right? I don't have answers. I have more questions. There's other species of monkey. There's squirrel monkeys in Puerto Rico, and I did try to do studies with them in the north of the island up there, but either their feces hit the leaves and break apart. They never go to the ground, so I don't see them. In the dry forest, the feces remain for months, and nothing's dispersing it or anything, so you can just pick them up. That was not the case with the squirrel monkeys. So I would like to thank a lot of people who helped me with this project, many of my students, the university. A lot of people participated. I did very few dissections. My students were doing all the work, really. And certainly see and learn for the opportunity. If you have questions. Yes, well,
And what effect do they have on plants?
so we have cyclurids in the Mona Island, which are native, but green iguanas were introduced, and they are eating mangroves, and they're doing a lot of herbivory that we didn't previously have. And so they could be doing quite a bit of harm, actually. But I don't know that we've done any seed dispersal on them. Next. Yep. Go ahead. I can hear you. I'll repeat it.
Do the monkeys that you studied tend to stay in the same place, or do they move from area to area, which would affect their farming?
So they mainly were in the southwest of Puerto Rico, but the primatologist I was talking to is that once she gave instruction how you should probably go about eradicating them, and I don't know that that was followed. And so her fear was that they were going to spread, and they probably did. And so we probably won't be able to get rid of them. They're big. I mean, they're certainly bigger than the green monkeys, and we might be able to, but monkeys are smart, right? And so fingers crossed. Yep.
Would the monkeys disperse the seeds of native trees maybe further than local native seed dispersers? Do you know anything
Well,
about
yes,
that?
probably, because they're bigger, right? They would require more energy, right, to exist. It's kind of, from an anthropological point of view, it'd be interesting, you know, because you arrive to an island, what are you going to eat? How are you going to survive, right? And these monkeys figured it out. But maybe, because they are bigger than any other organism we have. But bats certainly can do the job a lot more distance than many of these monkeys would be able to do. So maybe not.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I had one question because did all the native plants come up after feces, like even the cacti and other plants? And also, did they do better than a one that was not digested by a monkey, or?
I didn't try to plant some of the seeds that I collected to compare. I just wanted to know, were they successfully dispersing seeds? And so when I saw this, I didn't know what that was. I thought, what is that? Because I've never seen a cactus seedling. But that's a cactus seedling. And then they grew little spines, and I was like, ah, those are cacti. And so, yes, the cacti, it was amazing to see. I can't remember if that was your question, but sure. Other questions? You can see I'm melting up here. Yep, go ahead.
You were also interested in the squirrel monkeys, but the squirrel monkeys are like really, really, really insectivores, right? They eat a lot of insects.
Yeah, I'm not a primate. I don't even study.
Okay, yeah, well, you have like this thing, you have like the eye factor, that the closer your eyes together, the more you're a predator. And they have, their eyes are almost like, they almost have one eye. Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of look a little cross-eyed.
Yeah. And I also know that I've seen them eating in Costa Rica, they eat a lot of insects, and
They're
really
cute.
insectivore. Yeah, they're cute.
But there's nobody. I don't know that anybody's eradicating them yet. They're in. There's a landfill nearby, and so they can go raid and find food. I guess insects. But yeah, I've been told there are vervets, the ones with the blue scrotal sac on Puerto Rico, but I've never seen them, so I don't believe that yet. That's it.
All right. Thank you,
Thank you guys for coming.
Alex. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. If you're interested in purchasing raffle tickets or signing up for tomorrow's field project with Alex, hike to be determined, but we will be meeting at the tent at 3 o'clock. Let Lynn or I know, and enjoy the rest of your evening. And stay for dinner at Booba.
Yes.